everyone, it's Cassie and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be my wrap up slash recent reads. I haven't done a wrap up I think since the end of November. I think I did one for November, but I didn't do one for December. January I didn't do one because February I was super busy and I decided that I would just do a recent reads one. I don't know in the future if I'm going to do every 2 months or if I'm going to do monthly. I think it'll just depend month to month, so we will see. Let's just get into the video and start off with my January reads. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and give it a big thumbs up. Both those would mean the absolute world to me. My Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and Amazon wishlist will be linked in the description box below if you're interested in checking any of those out. Let's just get into my recent reads. The first book that I read in 2023 was The Ivies by Alexa Dawn. This feels like forever ago, and that's why I tend to not do the recent reads wrap-ups, because after 2 months it feels like I read this forever ago. This follows a group of high schoolers. It's young adult mystery, by the way, and they are this group of girls who are known for just trying to get into the Ivy League schools. So they're the Ivies because all they do is try and get into the Ivies with school activities, but then also a main thing that they do is sabotage other people that are potentially in their way of getting into the Ivy Leagues. Each of the girls have to apply to a different Ivy League because most of them only take one from each high school. One of the Ivies is found dead. She's found dead after she was admitted into Harvard. Our main character is wondering how far her friends are willing to go to get into the Ivies, and will her exception into a certain school be her death sentence. I quite enjoyed this. I think it was a solid mystery. These people are awful, and I think I've said this quite a few times on my channel. I like mysteries where people aren't good. I don't have a problem in a mystery type of book if our character is unlikable or have done bad things. I don't really feel like I need to like them in a book, at least with mysteries. The fact that these girls and our main character weren't particular, like our main character wasn't as bad as her friends, but still not the greatest. I think it was a fun premise because, well, I don't live in the States. I know there are certain people who their lives just revolve around getting into an Ivy League school. I enjoyed this, and it was nice because it was short. There wasn't too much filler. And there's kind of like a romance in here too, which I love, so it was solid. I gave this 4 stars. Next, I read Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry. This is a romance and a sort of a series of companion romance novels where we follow the Edens. It's the Eden series. Each book is a Eden sibling. There are 6 of them that live in Quincy, Montana, a little small town, and they're pretty infamous in this town. They're connected to absolutely everything. So yeah, this is the first one. It introduces us to the world and to the family. We follow Winslow, our main character, who is coming to Quincy. She has spent time in Quincy before because she has connections to it, but she's coming there to become the new police chief. And then we have Griffin, who is our male love interest, as they kind of fight this connection between them, as they think it just would never work and they're just not meant to be. Then one part that I really loved about this book was there is a investigation into these suicides that have been happening on Indigo Ridge. Something just doesn't sit right with Winslow about these suicides, and so she decides to look more into them as if maybe they are murders. So there is a mystery subplot to this. It isn't a huge part. Like, I think it's a chunk at the beginning, and then throughout the middle there isn't a lot, and then the end there is a big chunk of it. So I really enjoyed that about this one. I really liked the couple as well. I give this 5 stars. This is my first 5-star of the year. It really helped me get into my romance era. You will see 2 other books in this series in this wrap-up because I'm really enjoying. I like her writing, and I like the Eden family. I feel like this video is gonna be really long because I'm already talking so much. Keeping the Moon by Sarah Dessen. This is a book that I've had since I believe in middle school, and I'm 23 now, so it's been a hot minute. And I finally just bit the bullet and read it. And I'm glad I read it so then I can like say I read it. But it was meh. Like, Sarah Dessen used to be my favorite author in middle school. And I read one in early 2022 and I quite enjoyed it. This one, absolutely nothing happens. Her name is Nicole, I think. So I think they call her Coley. I don't know. At the beginning of this book, she's describing how her and her mom used to both be overweight, and that was kind of a bonding thing for them, and then her mom lost all this weight and kind of forced it on her as well, and has become this fitness kind of icon. She was like a fitness influencer before, I don't know what they're considered. She would go around and do classes around the world and go on like talk shows and stuff and do her fitness stuff. So her and her mom don't have the greatest relationship just because of that. And then her mom's going on this trip. So Coley is going to Colby, North Carolina to stay with her aunt while her mom's on this trip. But her kind of meeting these girls and kind of gaining a friendship with them because she never really had friends because they move around a lot and because then people were mean to her. And there was rumors about her and what she did with boys and mean girls type of stuff. So then yeah, she goes to this town, becomes friends with these girls. It's really just hard to describe because nothing really happens. It's kind of like, I wouldn't even say coming of age, but just kind of gaining a little bit more confidence and finally having girlfriends, except they're like way older than she is. She's 15. I'm pretty sure they're like into their 20s. And then there's also a relationship with a guy, but I think he's borderline. To me, I might have missed a sentence where they said how old he was, but to me, I'm pretty sure he was 18, 19, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So that was a little weird for me. Just nothing happened. It was a really quick, easy read, and I'm glad I have this off of my TBR, but I might end up getting rid of this. I think I gave it a 2.75. Then the next book I read, I don't have because it is one that I read on Kindle, and it is Christmas in Quincy, which is the little novella. I think it's supposed to be a prequel, but I read it after Indigo Ridge, obviously, for the Edens series. This one doesn't follow any of the Edens siblings. Basically, the Edens own a hotel in Quincy, which also has the restaurant in Quincy, and we have our main character who is from California and is trying to get away from something we don't know really at first, kind of from her family. I think that's kind of what's told. So she goes on this vacation to Quincy for Christmas, not telling her family. Then there's a knock on her door, and it is basically her bodyguard. He's not really her bodyguard. He used to kind of be her bodyguard because her dad has a lot of money, and it's kind of a mysterious thing. Not really, but she doesn't really give that many details at first. This guy was sent to Quincy to bring her back to California for Christmas, and she's just being like, no, I'm not going. And basically that's all that happens, is them just fighting, being like, hey, you need to go, and she's like, no. And it was really boring, and I did not like the characters. We see the Edens in it a tiny bit because it's their hotel, but if you didn't read the first one first, then you would not care about seeing them at all. It was just totally unneeded, and I did not like the characters. I did not get the chemistry. They just kept saying that they were like kind of interested in each other, but like, since we didn't get much of the background, I didn't believe it. So I didn't really like this one. I gave this 3 stars, but I probably could have gave it less. Then the last book that I read in January was Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Oh, I think I will have a reading vlog where I read at least these last 3 books. I really don't remember what I've vlogged and like videos I've filmed, so I gotta figure that out so I can post them all. But I think there will be a reading vlog with this in it. This is the sequel to Ninth House, which I loved. I read it at the end of 2021, I believed. I quite liked it. I do see flaws in the first one. Like the first 100 pages I didn't really like, but then I enjoyed the rest of it. Alex, as she is invited to have a full ride to Yale because they need help with their secret societies. She has some abilities that gets the interest of Yale, and she is called by Lethe to help basically watch over all of the secret societies and make sure that they're not doing anything they're not supposed to be doing. Then there is a murder on campus and she gets wrapped up in that, and the whole story just kind of develops from there. She also has like a dark past that's following her here, so all that. I really enjoyed the first one, like I said. This one picks up basically right after where we end off. It has a couple like flashback, flash forward, but I really enjoyed this one. I ended up giving it 4.75 stars. A lot of people were kind of annoyed because there was just constantly stuff happening. I kind of like that. I took the 0.25 off because I felt like I didn't need to be like, I could read 30 pages because I'm trying to read 30 pages of every day. And so I felt like I could read 30 pages and then I could put it down, and I didn't really need to continue reading until like closer to the end. I read this with the audiobook as well, which I did for the first book too, and I enjoyed doing it that way. And I thought this was a solid sequel. I don't really have that many complaints. I will say that there are stuff in like the first one and this one that I don't understand because I don't know a lot of the mythology behind some of it. So that is something that doesn't get explained a lot, especially in the first one. We move away from a little bit of the secret society stuff in here. There is like sprinkled in, but we don't see it as much because of the ending of the first book. We have something a little bit more important. But hopefully it doesn't have to take as long to write the next one, because I think Ninth House came out in 2019 and then this one came out in 2023. Luckily, I didn't have to wait that long because I read it in 2021, but still. My brain doesn't hold that much knowledge for that long, let's be honest. I can't remember. But yeah, those are the books that I read in January. Let's get into February. As I've said in a few videos, February was pretty busy for me, but I actually got quite a bit of reading done and I'm pretty proud of myself. I started off with Desperate Measures by Katee Robert. This was my first Katee Robert and I did enjoy it. I will be continuing this series, but what I've looked into this series, there's only a few that I'm interested in reading. This one is a adult smutty romance. It's in the Wicked Villains series. So we have Disney characters and their villain counterpart in a romance. This one follows Jasmine and Jafar. Jasmine is basically locked up in her home with her father, and he's like this big, I don't even know what he'd be considered. Let's be honest, the plot, there's not a lot of plot in here. He's some big guy in this world. And then Jafar works for him, but then Jafar basically overthrows him in the first chapter, so that's not spoiler. And part of that is getting Jasmine. We meet some of the characters that will be in the next few books. That's why I'm a little bit more interested in some than others, because I know who some of the characters are already. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It wasn't like the best book ever, but it wasn't bad at all. I did enjoy the bit of plot that was in there. It's just not a big part of the book. I gave this 4 stars. I don't really have that much to say about it. Next, I read a book that I love. Spoiler alert, I love it. And that is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. Oh my gosh, this was so good. This is a YA romance, and I don't tend to read a lot of YA romance or contemporary. Like, I have a few, but a lot of them just don't interest me. But this one, so good. I've heard good things about it, but I was kind of hesitant with it. But now that I read it, I'm gonna recommend it to everyone. So this one we follow Liz. She is obsessed with romantic comedies and romance stuff in general just because of her connection to it with her mom. It's something that ties her and her mom together. Then we have her neighbor Wes, who has kind of been terrorizing her since they were young. They have this back and forth where they terrorize each other, and as they're older there is one spot for parking, and they fight over it and kind of do stupid things to save the spot for themselves or make it so the other person can't have the spot. There was another boy that used to live by them, Michael, and he had moved away, but he moves back, and he is Liz's ultimate crush. And so she wants to be able to go to prom with him, but he doesn't really notice her as more than what she used to be when they knew each other, when they were like in elementary school. But he does become friends with Wes again. So she needs Wes's help in order to get noticed by Michael and in order to get Michael to ask her to prom. So they kind of have this agreement, her and Wes, to get Michael to be interested in her, and yeah, probably can guess what happens. And it is just so good. And the romance takes a long time to happen in here, and I don't care. It was so good. This is the epitome of a movie that I would love. Perfect. So good. And it deals with a lot of different topics. While the characters aren't perfect, they never are. I love this. 5 stars, so good. And I've been told that there is going to be a second one coming out. I don't think till next year, honestly. But I love this, and it's totally worth the hype. Would recommend. Definitely check it out if you have any interest in it at all. Then I read volume 2 of Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I was kind of saving these for 24-hour readathons just to like have an easy book. Then I realized I don't really do 24-hour readathons, so I don't know who I think I am. Like I just don't have a chance to. So I decided, since I had 7 books on my February TBR, that this would be one of them as an easy way to get another book in. And I loved it. I loved the first one. The first one was really good. This one was really good. We follow Nick and Charlie in the first one as they kind of develop a friendship that develops into maybe something more. They go through a lot of different things. They're just fun and easy reads and like cute. So I enjoy it. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen my March TBR, I am continuing this series in March. Then I read my first nonfiction of the year, and if you don't know, I am trying to read 6 nonfiction books this year. So I have one of them checked off, thank goodness, because I thought I was going to read none, because I'm pretty sure I read 0 in 2022. But I have some on my shelves, so I need to like actually read them. Anyways, so I read Murder, Madness, and Mayhem by Mike Brown, the host of the Dark Poutine podcast, 25 tales of true crime and dark history. And you should really pay attention to that title, unlike me. So this has 25 different stories. It is broken up into 4 different parts, I believe. Part 1 is Murder with a Twist. Part 2 is Perpetual Puzzles. Part 3, The Madness of Crowds. And Part 4, Notable Disasters. I enjoyed some of these stories, and I really just didn't have interest in other ones. And that's kind of my fault, because I was just mostly interested in the true crime ones. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 dark history ones that I was interested in, but I was just not super interested in that, and I should have just known that. I should have paid attention to the title and maybe just looked in here, because there is a table of contents, so you can figure out what's in here. Those aren't super, they're just not something I'm super interested in. So I enjoyed this to a certain extent. I have a reading vlog for I think most of February, and I also so I talked about this in there, where I realized the short form true crime stuff like this, where each of the story was 10 pages, it's just not really what I'm interested in. I watch a lot of podcasts on YouTube where I'll have Crime Weekly, for example. This is one that I mostly watch, where they'll deep dive into a certain case, where they'll do like 7 parts to do all the background on stuff. Some of them are not that long, but like usually at least a case is at least like 4 hours of podcast. And I just really enjoy that. I think you can understand the case and the people a little bit more, or quite a bit more. So that's just more what I enjoy. And so that's what I learned from this. I thought it would be good in the way that they're short form, so they would be pretty easy to get through. And it wouldn't be super dense, like a bunch of information coming at you. But then it just felt like not enough information was coming to me. So I need a little bit more of a balance. But I enjoyed this enough, but I'm gonna see if certain people in my life want to read it. And if not, I'll probably unhaul this. And then the last book in February, and the last book for this video, I read Juniper Hill by Devney Perry, the second book in the Eden series. Knox Eden and Memphis Ward. Memphis is coming to Quincy to start a new life, and she's coming there to work at the hotel that I mentioned for Christmas in Quincy. She's coming to work there. The sister that mostly runs the hotel hired her, and Memphis has a son, basically newborn, and they have been unable to find anywhere to stay in Quincy. So her name is Eloise. The sister Eloise basically volunteers her brother Knox's loft for Memphis and her son Drake to stay in. So she shows up basically just having a really rough time getting to Quincy, and Knox is kind of grumpy and clearly just doesn't want her staying there and just kind of got roped into it. So he is a chef at the hotel, his own restaurant called Knuckles. It's kind of forced proximity in a way, but not really. She lives above his garage, so they live in different spots, but he hears her son all the time because he cries all the time. And they work the same spot, so their lives are overlapping a lot. Not really forced proximity, but you know what I'm trying to say. He doesn't want there to be a connection, neither does she, and you know what happens. Her family is not great, so she has this past with her family that she's just not willing to trust a lot of people, and the father of her son also makes her unable to trust people. This one I didn't love as much. I enjoyed it. I don't think I didn't mind Memphis, but she was only okay. I liked Winslow in the first one better, and Knox was good, but I don't know that I like romance with kids in it. And while it's not the biggest part of this, the kids in it more than I probably prefer. I don't know, and I know everyone deserves love. That is not what I'm saying. Don't twist my words. It's just not something that I think I want to read about. Even in like normal romance books, when they like flash forward and they have kids, like I don't really care about that, if I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna try maybe one or two more ones with kids in it, but it's just not something that I think I'm super interested in, which is totally fine, just a preference. But it wasn't bad, but I just didn't enjoy this one as much as the first one. I am like between a 3.75 and a 4 on this one. These are all the books that I read in the first 2 months of 2023. I've read 10 books this year so far, which is pretty good for me. I was really just planning on at least reading 4 a month. So I'm pretty proud of myself. Been pretty busy. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in January and February. Let me know what you read in those months. And if you've read any of the books that I read in those 2 months, let me know what you thought about them. I would love to hear it. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and give it a big thumbs up. Both those would mean the absolute world to me. And I will see you in my next video.